associated with that. It sounds amazing.
As always, Kenji.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Kenji wasn't in Intense. He was in Dublin, but his partners there were and had organized it.
Hey everybody, sorry for the brief delay. I was getting the live stream set up. Hope everyone is well. Let me let's get rid of this. There we all are. All right. So nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Good to see
Hi,
you, Bob.
guys.
Yeah. I guess let's chit chat a little bit, give everybody some time to join in. Maybe we'll go around, introduce ourselves again, maybe any significant updates that you're interested in sharing would be awesome. But it looks like it's all similar group from last year, so no huge surprises. Um, as you know, I'm Bob Campbell, the co-creator of Maybe Night with all of you. Currently working on a comic book adaptation of the Illuminatus trilogy called Tales of Illuminatus, which is a secondary connection to Finnegans Wake because Illuminatus itself is a very Finnegans Wake inspired work, as Eric Wagner can attest in his new book. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. That's who I am, and I can pass it off to whoever wants to jump in.
Well, I'm Oz Fritz, and I think most people know who I am. My significant update is that I received my first ever, I broke my chemotherapy virginity 2 days ago. So I'm not in 100%, and I might drop out early, but I'm feeling good right now. And I'm working on, I'm rereading Thomas Pynchon's Shadow Ticket, taking notes this time because the first time I read it just for pure enjoyment and not analyzing anything too much, and now I'm reading it and taking notes, reading it more slowly and to work up a blog for it.
That's amazing. Thank you for being here, Oz. I'm so sorry that that's what you're dealing with right now, but we very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And don't be sorry at all. And I'm not sad. It's just
yeah, a thing you're dealing with,
yeah,
and presumably very well if I know you.
as good as possible. Yeah, and I have a lot of help. I have a tremendous amount of support.
That's awesome. That's great. And I'm reading Shadow Ticket right now, so I look forward to getting your thoughts to help me along. They were very, very helpful when I was reading Vineland, so it'll be appreciated.
Cool.
Well, I'll say hello. I'm Richard Hart. I'm the reader in One Little Goat's Finnegans Wake film series. We've just released film 3 available on YouTube now, and the trailer for film 4. Recently, we filmed chapter 8 at a laundromat. That's the washerwomen chapter with Irish Canadian actress Pip Dwyer reading this time. And obviously, we've also filmed chapters 5, 6, and 7 in the interim. And Adam, who I see has just joined us, and I are rehearsing book 2, chapter 1, which will film. I don't think we've decided where we're going to film it yet, but it'll film sometime in the next year, and then we'll have to deal with book 2, chapter 2, which we're looking forward to as well.
We've been looking forward to hearing your take on chapter 3, because yes, at the end of chapter 2 was so great with the ballad and everything. So it's great news that it's now available.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lorenzo. I am independent researcher. I do not have much to new to say because I'm still quite far from reaching that point where I can share some of my findings in a more serious and explicit way. So I'm still working on it, but the work continues and progresses, and so that's it. I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I just want to say that Lorenzo has these theories that he's not ready to share, but he's sharing bits of it in emails to people, and then people email it to other people, all obviously with Lorenzo's consent. So we have this secret chain of emails from Lorenzo from which we get some outstanding ideas that we in our Ukrainian group really like using because they take our reading to the next level.
Thank you.
I can go next. So I'm Igor Belokrinitsky, along with Linda and Alexander. I'm part of the Ukrainian Finnegans Wake reading group. We're just finishing our second year of reading. And while other groups measure their progress in pages read, we have other key performance indicators. We also have consumed quite a bit of whiskey in conjunction with the different reading cues, as some of you who've joined our calls have witnessed. We also measure it in the beautiful mind maps that Linda creates, in the number of crazy theories discussed, and certainly in the very high number of Russian generals shot, which gives us a particular pleasure as we go through the book.
I
So
bet.
happy to be part of this.
And to add to this, Igor's own matrix for each fragment that we are covering, as well as some of his poems inspired by what we have read and discussed.
I'm struck. I was thinking about Bobby's beautiful Illuminatus comic books, and I think back to images from the Lord of the Rings in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. There were so many different ideas of what Gandalf looked like, what Middle Earth looked like. And then with the popularity of the Fellowship of the Ring movie, I think that for many of us, Gandalf now looks like Sir Ian McKellen. And I'm curious if how Bobby's visual effect, how people see Hagbard, Chelene, and Saul Goodman, etc. Unfortunately, so much of our modern time resonates with some of the darker aspects of Illuminatus, and I'm grateful for that. Just as thinking about the Russian general getting shot in the Crimean War, showing up in Finnegans Wake, it keeps coming back to Ezra Pound's notion that literature is news that stays news.
I love that. That is that's kind of how Finnegan's Wake stays relevant, by capturing the general shape of things, and it remains relevant no matter what's actually going on, because the shape underneath of it remains. All right, we're making good progress here.
General shape of things was that
which makes a nice target, I suppose. So something to shoot for.
I'm Brenton. I'm just sort of trying to keep up at the moment. It's 3 a.m. In Australia. I feel like I've somewhat decoupled from the path of Joyce, not intentionally, but just in the various strands that I've been following this year. So I'm just here trying to keep up, both thematically and with the powers of my brain at this hour of the day.
Yeah, you're fully submerged in the actual maybe night, where I'm sitting around. It's noon, so it's you're thematically appropriate. I'm a little out of step. And hi to your feline friend back there.
Yes, she's a menace, but she's going to play it up for the camera.
I appreciate it.
Hi guys. Peter Quadrino, good to be with you all. I think I met most of you last year. Great to be back. I host the Finnegans Wake Reading Group of Austin, Texas. We're still going strong. We're just finishing the Night Lessons chapter now. We're up to the last page, which it's a little weird if you look at the last page of Night Lessons compared to what's going on right now. It's, on that page it mentions Christmas. There's like a Christmas card. Um, but oddly enough, there's also like the kids murdering the parents. The Yuletide greetings become Yule die greetings. Anyway, so I also just wrote a quick thing on my blog that's talking about some biographies of Joyce. I've become interested in like different approaches to writing a biography of a literary figure. And of course, there's the Richard Ellman biography, and then this year there was a book written about Ellman's biography. So I kind of took that as a starting point and just talked about some other biographies of Joyce that I like.
Can you link to that in the chat, please?
Yes. And also, I'll just mention in the past year, I've become like completely obsessed with Herman Melville and also reading lots of different biographical studies of Melville. So yeah, I'm just becoming interested in like both different people taking different approaches to biography, and also it's similar to like how different translators come up with different translations of texts. It's like, it's like doing a cover of a song, it's like there's all this different variation you could do while also sticking with the core elements. So yeah, good to be with you all.
Peter, I'd love to read that piece of yours. Hi, my name is Adam Seelig. I'm part of Richard Hart's team filming Finnegans Wake and also releasing it as a podcast. And maybe, Peter, you want to balance out some of your reading with some shorter material, maybe like haikus of Basho or Sappho fragments, something that's not quite as epic, but obviously you're into the long reads. I'm very impressed. So yeah, Ellman's biography, there's been a lot written about it recently, I guess, because of this book that is about Ellman's biography. So that's very cool. Nice to be with you all, familiar faces, and thanks for hosting, Bob.
It is my pleasure. All right, Alexander, it's down to you.
Yep. Alexander, I'm a part of Ukrainian Finnegans Wake reading group. I'm very happy to see you all, guys, and thank you for this opportunity to be together.
Fantastic. And then we have Alexander recruited someone to join us whose schedule didn't align, who recorded a message for us. This is Kenji, who is if you're on Blue Sky at all, he's like one of the more prominent Joyce voices on there, doing a lot of well, as you're going to see, very interesting work. So I figure we'll play his video, we'll get his take, and then we'll dive in more properly. Let me make sure the audio works and everything.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenji, and I am a Dublin-based translator and Joyce reader, or as some might say, a Wake fanatic. I am very honored and delighted to be part of this international gathering, which shows the potential of experimental literature to connect people across linguistic and national boundaries. This evening, I would like to tell you about a new Japanese translation project, which we just launched this year in the summer of 2025. So, together with Irish literary scholar Yuta Imazeki, I am currently working on a new Japanese translation of the Wake. We are currently publishing the translation chapter by chapter on our website, finneganswake.net, and we will be continuing to do so over the next decade. The text is licensed under a non-commercial Creative Commons license, which means that anyone in Japan or elsewhere can use and adapt the work for non-commercial purposes. Prior to translating the text, we populate an identically laid out notes page. So as you can see, the original text is laid out identically to the translation, and the text is populated by notes. When a user clicks on some of the phrases, the notes show the details of that phrase, including references and external links. So this is a very easy way for visitors of this website to compare the original text to the translation. I have several motivations for venturing into this project, and some of it is no doubt technical, but I also believe that the new translation project has broader social and aesthetic implications, which I will explain in the rest of the recording. The Japanese translation of the Wake goes back to 1933, when the ALP fragment was first translated into Japanese. As you know, Joyce's work itself was published in 1939, which means that the Japanese translation began even before the publication of the original text in full. Since then, translators in Japan have repeatedly attempted to translate the text. The first complete translation of the entire book appeared in 1993, translated by Naoki Yanase. In 2004, an abridged high-quality translation by Kyoko Miyata, was complete with footnotes, was published. And in 2014, a revised complete translation of the full book was published by Tatsuo Hamada from ALP Press. None of the past translators, however, had access to the full range of tools that we have today. So, for example, Google Search was launched in Japan only in the year 2000, 7 years after the Yanase translation was published. Wikipedia was launched in 2001. Tweet, as we all know, was launched in 2005. There is also a massive database of different dictionaries in Japan, which is called Japan Knowledge. Japan Knowledge was also launched in 2001, 8 years after the publication of the Yanase translation. So these and many other tools which we have at our disposal today were not available to these past translators. So from a technical point of view, our hope is to make full use of these new tools that are available to us, and thereby achieve a higher standard of accuracy, readability, and linguistic richness. So, with the help of my colleague Yuta Imazaki, I did my very best to preserve the essential qualities of the original text of Finnegans Wake, which includes the Irishness of the text, the many Irish references, and references to events related to Irish history. It is also a very personal book to James Joyce, and therefore again I endeavored to preserve as much of the reference to Joyce's personal life and the people around him as possible. Moreover, I had to confront the history of the Japanese language while working on this translation. What this means is that I had to confront the imperial and colonial history associated with the rise of modern standardized Japanese. As some of you might know, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Japan, after modernizing, has invaded multiple regions and countries of East Asia, and notably colonized Taiwan, Korea, Manchuria, and other regions. On these countries, standard Japanese was forced upon the colonized peoples in the name of, quote, co-prosperity. Meanwhile, back home, the Japanese government was actively marginalizing regional dialects as well, particularly the Ainu and Ryukyuan languages, in an attempt to replace them with standardized Japanese, which was introduced and taught in compulsory education as, quote, the national language. So with this historical context in mind, in our translation, the biggest innovation over all previous translations is the heavy usage of non-standard Japanese, particularly dialect and slang terms. So, just as Joyce attempted to undermine the linguistic hegemony of standardized high-class British English through Joyce's own literature, so does our translation attempt to undermine the homogeneity and hegemony of standardized Japanese. By doing so, we hope to kindle a renewed sense of vitality and curiosity towards non-standard Japanese among our readers. We also hope to encourage literary writers in Japan to critically reflect upon their own usage of standardized Japanese in their own works. And we hope to empower these writers to develop their styles outside the narrow confines of so-called accessible standard Japanese. So, in conclusion, I would like to read to you the second half of page 44, which is just before the performance of the Ballad of Percy O'Reilly, just to give you a sense of how the Japanese translation sounds. I hope you will hear some of the resonances of the source text in what follows. こうして芝園の終焉をレンは回れん。各このレンをホスティは作った。発生。ボイル家にカハル家。スケレット家にプリチャード家も。シカワシピアサシ。本当の林はストンと住まわん。ここにネクレる後人は、バイクとビルのも、マイクと見るのも、リンやフィンとダブルのも、ルグ、バク、ダン、ロプ、レクス、ラックス、ガン、ギンとハフルのもいる。アーサとアッスのも、バーサとバッスのも、ホル、ノル、ソル、ウィル、ウィール、ウォールとスのもいるけど、足はあれをパース・オライリーとパンするよ。他にいい指名はないもんで、あわやなしになっちゃうね。一斉に、よっイキヤホスティ、霊気のホスティ、小イヤホスティ、レンホレ歌いん、やーれんやーれん、熟練のレンの王。聞きここあるもおる。聞かれどこないもおる。聞きかここ他はある。聞かれかこどこ他はない。来るよ来るよ。悪いか悪いか。割れ替え、ガラスガラガラ。その、キュリッカキュラッカキュラスカキュロッパークラッチャーバッタキュレッピキュロッティグラダクセミサミノイトアプリディアプロディプコンプコット。Thank you for your attention.
I mean, how cool is that, right?
So cool. So cool.
Very. I followed the text. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Hosty was recognizable, and most of the Thunderword was, I think, it was mostly as it is in the original text, and also Ram. So I could definitely hear Ram. I wonder, was it like, did it mean something in Japanese that somehow coincide in meaning, or what was it? But of course, Kenji is not here to answer these questions, but we invited Kenji once. No, definitely we'll invite him again, so that he can explain some of this to us. Fascinating. Thank you for playing this.
Of course, it was so cool.
Sorry to jump in, but
No, go ahead.
As of tomorrow, and you can listen to it, we're putting up our podcast of my interview with Kenji exactly about this. And I asked him specifically about the Thunder word and what he put in there. So I think for this crowd, it's going to be an interesting listen. It's almost the entire program is just Kenji talking about what he's doing. I had a few prompting questions, but otherwise he took it away, and it's very, very interesting. His project is incredible. And one of the things that I've been saying about his translation, as I've learned more about it from him, from his colleague Yuta, from another colleague Kaori, and I was in Tokyo a couple of months ago and met with them, and so I learned a lot about it. But really, the fundamental difference in Kenji's translation is that he is working across Japanese dialects. So he's really broadening. And so my shorthand for understanding it, and he was okay with this shorthand, is that he's translating it. I mean, just as Joyce wrote Finnegans Wake in languages, or in language kind of broadly, or in a dream language or a cross language, you can't simply say English. It's the same with Kenji's translation, where he's translating it not into Japanese, but into Japaneses, plural. So he's really moved away from this standardized Japanese. And I asked him, well, so that's well and good that you're drawing on all these dialects. Do you speak those dialects? And he doesn't, because he was born and raised just north of Tokyo in a standardized Japanese format. So again, in the interview, he addresses some of this stuff. It's an incredible thing that he's doing, and he's of course tremendously knowledgeable about the text itself in the original.
Yeah, so it sounds like he kind of has to reinvent the trick that Joyce did with like English and the blend of languages that he used. Like he can't just follow a one-to-one path. He actually has to rederive the translations or the blending of words. Yeah, you can hear the wake in it still. You could still hear that same kind of like bouncy blending rhythm in his reading. I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and in the interview, we play Richard's readings and Kenji's readings back to back. Most of them are very short chunks because there's only so much you can take in with the ear in one fell swoop. So we do like, maybe a couple sentences. Also, you should really hear his translation of the opening sentence, which he was reluctant to translate because he seemed, it's too obvious to start in the beginning. But I twisted his arm and he translated the first sentence and or at least the opening sentence on page 3, and it's brilliant. It's amazing, and he captured the river run rhythm in Japanese. And he also has this, of course, massive challenge of not using Latin letters, right? So I asked him about that too. So there's a lot. There's a lot there.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good rock to turn over and see what is there. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not particularly well versed in a wide range of Japanese literature or anything at this point, but my day job, part of my day job is teaching Japanese, and I'd say I've never really heard Japanese sound like that. That sort of that poetic rhythm that it's got to it is really quite unique to what I've heard before. I think this is such a great idea and project. When we teach Japanese, the materials that we use are standardized towards the Tokyo dialect. So the Tokyo dialect, becomes kind of the dominant form of Japanese, and there's practicalities to why that is the case. It's such a different language. One of the questions I'd have, and my Japanese simply isn't good enough to recognize this or the lack of it in what I saw. I did see a lot of katakana, which is tends to be a phonetic sounding out of foreign words. But I also wonder, I know that the term holographic's been used in terms of Joyce's work, and Chinese in particular is quite a holographic language, written language, in the sense that the characters have these multiple readings and multiple interpretations. Japanese, deriving from Chinese, less so, but in the same way, does have these letters that have multiple pronunciations and meanings. And I'm kind of curious as to how, if at all, that's being used. The one thing I did notice is that there was a kanji there that, this is probably getting into the weeds a bit much, but there was a kanji word, a word made out of the Chinese, Japanese shared characters. And there's something called furigana, which is where you sound out the word, because not everyone can read words, especially as they get more complicated. There's the sounding out of it. And the sounding out was not a Japanese reading of a Japanese word, but was like the katakana sounding out of the English word above the Japanese word, which is unusual. It's not a common thing. That's probably into the weeds a bit, but I can see that there's definitely some interesting things happening. And I'd love to be able to understand what's sort of happening more, and the way that these different aspects are being taken advantage of.
Well, Brenton, Kenji is definitely open to hearing from people. He's very interested, really, in feedback. So I know that Finnegans Web, there's that, or send me a note. I can give you my email or whatever, and then you can ask him directly. I do know from his colleague Yuta that the earlier Finnegans Wake was really creating an illusion that there was a lot of kanji there, a lot of the kind of more traditional Chinese-derived symbols. So yeah, let me put you in touch, or through Finnegans Web, you can write to him. Yeah.
Cheers.
That's and the neat kind of thing too is, and I've noticed this for a decade now with my students. Teenagers in America are very interested in learning Japanese because a lot of the culture that they are into is starts in Japan, and all the anime and manga that they're drawn to has kind of lured them into being interested in learning the language. So there might actually be some potential for cross-pollination of our very different kinds of languages because there is that strong interest. And then if you have a project like this where you're kind of doing a similar trick to Japanese that Joyce did to our European languages, it would be kind of interesting to see if you could actually have a hybrid language of both alphabet and kanji. I think that would be a neat thing, kind of like how a lot of my students speak Spanglish, and so just more adding different tools from different languages into our myths. So I have a list of cards here that I can just shuffle at random whenever we need a topic of conversation. But if we're sometimes it's hard to tell if no one has anything to add to a particular topic or just hasn't done so yet. So if you want to use the emojis or the hand raise to indicate not to just run off to the next topic, we can stay with one topic the whole time. Just let me know so I'm not like steamrolling past anything that we want to talk about. So if we don't have anything more, but I do have something similar, which is, so has anyone seen this show Pluribus? We talked about this briefly in the Ukrainian group. So it's this TV show on Apple TV, and they make reference to Finnegan's Wake. It's kind of like the yeah.
Finn joined us. Sorry, Bobby, for interrupting you.
No,
Finn,
yeah,
so nice to see you.
Hello, sorry, I just got that email and I thought I'd jump in. So wishing you a very, very happy winter solstice, and sorry to interrupt.
No problem at all. Very nice to see you.
Yeah, it's lovely to know this is happening. Very cool.
Finn, and just I'm not sure if you have a lot of time, but if you just you haven't joined us previously, maybe you can give a short intro about you and about your contribution to Finnegans Wake. It will be great for guys to know you.
I'll try and keep it short, Alex. So yeah, I'm Finn, and I live in Oxford, and I teach at the University of London, a college called Royal Holloway, and I run a Finnegans Wake reading group online, which meets once a month, and I've been reading Finnegans Wake for nearly 40 years, I think, since I was about 17. So I'm now, yeah, it's about 40 years. And I wrote a book about it called Lots of Fun at Finnegans Wake, and I'm a big fan. And I do have a bit of news, actually. I think I'd just tell you a little bit of news, if I may, which is that I had a dream 2 nights ago in which I had a conversation with James Joyce in the dream. And after working on Joyce for 35 years or so, this is the first time that he's appeared in a dream. And he was telling me about his writer's block, and that he had a writer's block from 1927 to 1928. And I said, actually, James, it was longer than that. It carried on into 1929, 1930, and even a bit of 1931 as well. And he was quite neutral as a presence. He wasn't particularly scary, which is not how I would normally imagine he would appear in my dreams. So, you know, the wake comes between asleep and awake, doesn't it? Life comes between asleep and awake. So there you go.
That's fantastic. And we have a maybe night tradition where any dream you have on around this time you can use for magical purposes. So
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm glad to hear that because I'm definitely intending to.
and I have a question. So your name is Finn. Is this a good case of nominative determinism?
Definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm grateful to my parents. They really chose a good name.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I enjoy it. Yeah.
That sounds really cool. And that must be fun to read the book because it feels like it's talking to you like most of the time.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. But sometimes I get the impression that Tim Finnegan, he's not such a great bloke sometimes. When they're trying to get him to go back to sleep.
Yeah,
they've had enough of him and they say, Finn, no more.
Right.
Finn no more. And I'm thinking, okay, I've had my time.
Yeah, I
gotta get out of here.
That's awesome. So there's this show on Apple TV, and it mentions Finnegan's Wake in a kind of negative way, not negative, but in the kind of negative way that it always gets brought up, which is like as something that's too difficult to be enjoyable. And that's like how it's a writer struggling with not creating things of great literature and just kind of creating like pop art. And it's like, well, Finnegan's Wake doesn't make people happy. And I think that's like a wild misunderstanding that only happens if you don't actually really engage with it or engage with it in this way. So it gave me this insight, which is, and so people treat a lot of books, say like a Ulysses or a Moby Dick, like it's a mountain to climb, and that it's an accomplishment that you achieve, and that that Finnegan's Wake is kind of not that. That it doesn't need to be that. And there was another thing where there was a writer I like, Grant Morrison, talking about how they've tried and failed to read Finnegan's Wake for 30 years. And I was like, that's just called reading Finnegan's Wake. That's not, there's no, if you try to read it for 30 years and fail, you have succeeded. That's called doing it. So I had this idea so we have this thing set up where we meet once a year, and the main venue or the main premise of meeting around a book every year or on a regular basis is like a reading group. So I had this idea for a reading group that kind of slows down to the point that you have to not think of finishing the book as an accomplishment. That we really test the idea, is the whole contained in each part. And like PQ, I looked at the reading group you had where it was like it took you guys 20 years to read Finnegan's Wake, or however long it was. And I say, what's the hurry? Slow down. What are you rushing for? So I have an idea. Here, let me pull up the thing. So what I would like to do is 4 pages a year. Yeah, let's scroll down a little bit. So it's called the Winter Wakians, the world's slowest Finnegan's Wake reading group. We're going to do 4 pages per year. We meet every winter solstice from the year 2026 to the year 2234. I've got a schedule here. It's here, let's check out this. Can I pull up the schedule too? Here we go. So I got dates for the whole thing. And a little bit the idea too is to like encourage the kind of thing where you're thinking super long term, where you're extending your perspective, not just on the day to day, the year to year, even the lifetime as a whole, and starting something that could go for hundreds of years. Is it likely to? know, but you know, you never know what happens once you start something. So that's my thinking is, and the question to the group would be, um, do you think that you need to read the entirety of Finnegan's Wake to engage with it in a meaningful way, or can you just kind of dive in anywhere and still get the picture?
I think it's interesting, and I love your plan. I think I was thinking like a letter a year. No.
Yeah, right.
You know, I think there's famously Crowley talked about approaching the Bible that way. You know, spending 6 months on the first sentence of the Bible. One of the things about Finnegans Wake is that it frustrates many readers' expectations. So I think one of the hostilities that people who love to read, who love characters and stories, don't find that experience sometimes when they read Finnegans Wake, and hence they have incredible hostility to it. I think about Vladimir Nabokov, etc. So for people who have an idea that they read a book and they finish it, and they put it up on Goodreads or they put it on YouTube, or the different way that people process what books mean to them. I was struck Michael Johnson's new blog yesterday. He reads 4 hours a day. It's like, my God, I haven't done that for a long time. But when I first started my first Finnegans Wake group back in 85, I thought it was going to be like a Bible study. Okay. And again, most people don't read the Bible cover to cover. I've even encountered Catholics who are hostile to the idea of reading the Bible cover to cover. It's not supposed to be read that way. And so people encounter Finnegans Wake in so many different ways. In ancient Rome, people approached Virgil and they would do Virgilomancy, where they would open their copy of the Aeneid at random. Okay. There's one word I love in Finnegans Wake, paganism. How people can approach art in so many different ways. And so I think it's a great idea, Bobby. Or Bob, or Robert.
Oh, either way, yeah, no, both are fine.
Sure.
Both are fine. Thank you.
I think it would be helpful. One of the things that Kenji, back to Kenji Hayakawa for a moment, but he's not the only one to say this. With his reading group and with his Japanese translation, he's starting with chapter 2. And I think that in a way, Finnegans Wake has front-loaded one of the harder passages, something that doesn't happen until you're already a few chapters into Ulysses. People really enjoy the beginning of Ulysses, and then they give up a few chapters in. Well, with Finnegans Wake, that first chapter is a pretty tough place to start because it's an overture that, in a sense, assumes that you already know everything that's happened here. So I think that's also smart. Take out chapter 2. Pardon me. Remove chapter 1. Start at chapter 2 if you're starting in. You can also, while you're at it, skip chapter 6, which is the quiz show. These are chapters that Joyce rammed in there. They weren't actually part of the original. So Eric, when you're talking about people looking for character and narrative and so on, well, chapter 2 opens with, here's an introduction. Here's our protagonist. Here's who Euriker is. So he didn't do himself any favors, our author, by putting that first chapter, there. So I think that in terms of people's approach and the difficulty and so on, it's also helpful to have someone, let's say, like Kenji is doing with his Japanese reading group, to say, why don't you just skip chapter 1? Let's start at chapter 2 and we'll come back to it. And that's very helpful. To have a guide like that can be enormously helpful.
I just want to tack on to Adam's point that when I first read Finnegans Wake years ago, and also when I started the reading group, we are using this approach to the what chapters to read first from an article called Finnegans Wake for Dummies by Sebastian Knowles, where he attempted to rank the chapters from easiest to hardest and read it that way. And it was starting with chapter 5, which is the digging up the letter and all the description of the letter, and then it goes 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it skips a few, and then it does a few more, and then it actually goes to the last chapter, cycles back to the first. So it does have like a forward motion, but it's trying to go from easiest to hardest, and I found that's a pretty good way to read it, actually.
That's
Yeah,
good.
so
I'm reminded of Samuel Beckett starting his rehearsals of Waiting for Godot with a lucky speech, which is right in the middle. It's complete nonsense, and in a way, start there. Now you know everything. You can work out from there.
so there's like modularity to it, or where you can switch the parts around. Like when you create the films of the readings, do you consider each one like a finished piece in and of itself? I would assume, right? And that they're like episodes of a show that you can turn on at any point, or would you prefer a sequence, or are you know what I mean? Like, would you prefer to start one, two, three, or can you just dive in anywhere?
Look, if it doesn't kill us first and we live long enough to do the whole film, then once it's there, people can just jump wherever they want. Happy for people to start at chapter 2, skip chapter 1 by all means. Yeah, just as the book is there. That's why we have the page numbers, we have all the text. It's there to be read. I mean, look, the long and short of it is I wouldn't be reading Finnegans Wake if it weren't for Richard Hart, who's on this call with us too. And it's because he has such a feel for it. My shorthand would be he speaks fluent Joyce. He's just good with it. He's amazing with it. He was born and raised in Dublin. I mean, I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm from the west coast of Canada. I don't have the same access. So I wanted everyone to have that access. That's all. And then if they want to have that access starting at chapter 2 or chapter 3 or chapter 7, if we manage to get all this up there, then absolutely, wherever they want, non-linearly.
I love it.
I've
And
sort of
no, yeah, go ahead.
already established myself as underqualified to answer this, but I will say, I have a bit of a spiel that I give to my students in English class, where I sort of say, there's try to get away from this idea that they're meant to be like deferent to these books that we read, and that there's something in there that is brilliant that they're just too stupid to understand. And I sort of have this little speech that I give, which more or less says, there's nothing great in great literature. There's not even anything good in it. There's nothing good in a book. There's nothing great in a book. There's nothing brilliant in it. What happens is these books are open to the world, and as they connect to the world and to our personal world of human experience, we're able to form relationships, sometimes relationships of staggering complexity and value, by engaging with the text and with the world that text invites us to go into. But that's the process of engagement with the text. It's not the idea that this text is itself, something we have to be different to. And I sort of feel like, to the extent that this relates to this, again, this book that I haven't read, I think that my approach more generally is just to say, there's nothing that you have to qualify for in terms of your engagement with the text. There's nothing in the book that you're expected to reach to do it properly. There's just, and Oz would understand this because Oz is also very deeply entrenched in the world of Deleuze, who I draw a lot of this from. There is the machine of the book and the machines of our lives, and those things, when they engage with each other, can produce marvelous things, if we are open to allow ourselves to be ever connected and interconnected with the world of lived human experience through these texts. But it's that world of lived human experience and not the text itself that matter.
Yeah, so I guess case in point, I mean, you're doing it and you haven't even read the book. So, like, clearly, you know what I mean? Like, you're as in it as anyone without having to literally have been in it. So it seems to be pretty flexible. All right, I can do a new card if we're ready to move on. But if anyone wants to jump in,
Yes, I'll jump in for a second.
of course.
Following up on what Brenton said, in a more, what I'm finding is that, like, books like Finnegans Wake or other important books are not necessarily just abstract philosophical things to think about, that they can have really positive and helpful interactions with our daily lives. So I haven't been reading Finnegans Wake for maybe about a year. I read it again last year, but in terms of my cancer treatment and all that, I'm going through the Book of the Law, Crowley's Book of the Law, and I'm finding like the third chapter, I just read it this morning. And I'm not saying that anyone intended this, but it's very, very helpful to someone going through what I'm going through. And there are phrases that you can take as applying to cancer. Like there's a line that says, there is division hither homeward. You know, there's division in your home. And what cancer is, it's rapidly dividing cells that are trying to divide against the healthy cells. And so you can frame things in that way. You can use a book. And that's what I was telling you. I did a series on Deleuze's The Logic of Sense video series. And the other day, there's a study group on it, and they invited me to it. And that's what I was trying to get across to them, that it's not just these ideas and concepts and philosophy, but they have they can have a total relation to experienced, lived life, what Brenton was saying.
I love it. All right, so next card, I want to talk about the missing apostrophe in the title of the book, as almost to emphasize that you could probably spend a good 6 months just going through the title before you even crack the first page in terms of getting a lot out of something. But there's something I noticed. So, you know, obviously the ton of different ways to interpret the title. And then there's the famous, and I think not apocryphal story. I think Toby Philpott and I chased down the source on this, and I think it might be reliable enough that it's true that Joyce indicated the reason why he removed the apostrophe was as a warning to the ruling classes that in every cultural cycle, the oppressed people wake up and overthrow the status quo. And so something I noticed is that by removing the apostrophe and making it a plural verb, that it's actually making the title more specific. It actually limits the interpretations, whereas in every other decision he makes creatively and literally, it's always about welcoming more interpretations. Leaving the apostrophe in gives you way more wiggle room for what it means. It's a guy's funeral. It's a guy waking up. It's the path through water. It's all these things. But by removing the apostrophe, you de-emphasize those interpretations. What Finnegans Wake, it's a plural verb. Most other interpretations are dependent on it being a possessive noun. And now I'm with Joyce, everything's still fair play, but it's kind of interesting that in titling the book, he actually narrowed his focus where usually he broadens the focus. And I thought that was interesting.
I think there's another reading of that, though. I think you can,
sure.
You can see it. You can see it from another perspective, because even if the apostrophe is missing, you cannot say that the possessive is ruled out.
Oh, sure.
When you see Finnegans Wake, you still think of the apostrophe that is missing, even if it's not there. So there could be, another reading, which is that this is Finnegans Wake in a language, meaning Finnegans Wake with the apostrophe, written in a language which is not exactly English, does not follow exactly the same rules, or let's say it doesn't have as strict rules as English has. You said with Joyce everything is permitted. Okay, but he wants to make a rule, to be precise with that, I guess. And it's not just that he concedes himself to to break the rules. I think there's a rule in the way that he is using language. It's broadening what is usually there as syntax. And so one from the very title can see that it's not English. It's not regular English because the apostrophe is missing. At least that's another way of reading it. That's how I usually look at it. For example, Derrida's concept of difference, that there is, you can, he writes difference with one letter different than the usual spelling of difference in French, but the sound is the same. And so with that concept, he's trying to underline this dimension that is usually hidden, but that is actually there in language. And I think that Finnegans Wake works a bit like that, because it's the Finnegan with the apostrophe is somehow there, even if it's not there.
Right.
Lorenzo,
I guess
I think
no,
that
go ahead.
Lorenzo, and I'm not here to make an example of Finn, who joined us on the call, but if you look at the chat, and he wrote 17 years later, we're on page 567. I mean, anyone who is writing in English or texting in English knows that we are always inserting a ghost apostrophe. And the one that happens the most for us is ITS, IT apostrophe S. So anyone who's texted with anyone under the age of 20 knows that the apostrophe is basically a thing of the past. We just have to kind of imagine it there. So I'm with you on that. That you're still kind of reading it and inserting it actively mentally.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess that also speaks to the idea that it's a. Oh, Eric, did you have something?
In what McLuhan calls the post-literate world, we have many businesses now that do not have the apostrophe. Okay. And so the idea of following rules of grammar is so last millennium. And so when we take the apostrophe out, again, Finnegans then becomes just a plural noun, and the title then becomes an order. It's in the imperative mode. Finnegans, wake. That Joyce is telling us what to do if we in fact are Finnegans.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it also, so then it speaks to the soundscape aspect of Finnegans Wake, where there's kind of two different channels that we're tuning into. We're tuning into the sounds of the words, and then also the actual alphabet symbol structure. So some people seem to prefer to work in the one world and some in the other, and obviously to blend them together. So for who prefers and can speak to why, who prefers the soundscape of Finnegans Wake? Or are you more tuned into the actual reading the words? Would you rather listen to it or would you rather read it?
There's a wonderful bit where Louis Zukowski writes poetry with the integral sign from calculus, that is integral from sound to sense. And the idea that Zukowski writes that poetry works through sight, sound, and intellection. And so we can encounter Finnegans Wake lots of ways. I have not spent a ton of time the recording of Joyce reading from it, I've listened to a ton in the car. But so we have that mechanism of the actual physical book that sits on a bookshelf. What's Ezra Pound writes about opening unread books. How many shelves? I had a professor in college who was so happy that at the first editions of Ulysses, most of them had never had their pages cut. That people had them, and also there's that great bit in The Great Gatsby, where in Gatsby's library, the drunken man notices, oh, wow, they're real books. They're not just Hollywood props. And again, in our post-literate world, there are anti-book people who think books are now just museum art objects that people will just read on their Kindle if they're reading at all. But as the people in this chat could attest, Finnegans Wakes exist for so many people in so many different ways. People will do a page a day, a word a day. There are different study groups. They'll open it at random. They'll go back and back and back and back to certain passages, that it lives with us all. And, there's that whole genre of the horror story about the little bookshop that you got something at and you can never find it again. I wrote a horror screenplay back in the 80s about the idea that Finnegans Wake is, this horror novel. And I remember talking to Robert Anton Wilson about this, that nightmare is not the strongest part of Finnegans Wake for me. You think about the really scary nightmares you had as a kid. And I remember he was talking about this, there are some nightmares aspects, but I don't know that it scares that many people.
I remember, so speaking of the books that don't actually exist, I once went to a used bookstore and saw a copy of Intergalactic Pothead by Philip K. Dick. And I went back the next day and it was Galactic Pot Healer. And I was like, I don't want that. That's not the book I wanted. Sorry, go ahead, PQ.
Okay, I just want to add a couple things about the title. I actually disagree that removing the apostrophe kind of makes it more of a closed meaning. I think having the apostrophe, I think that kind of closes in the meaning. I don't know if you guys ever had this happen where you talk to someone you mentioned Finnegans Wake to someone, and people know the song. A lot of people know the song. Not a lot of people know the book, but a lot of people are very familiar with the song Finnegans Wake. And I think removing the apostrophe, part of it is like making it plural. It's including everybody. It's like all of us are Finnegans. Everyone in the book is Finnegans, and the character HCE is a multi. He's a pluralistic figure. It's here comes everybody. There's a line in there that he's more mob than man, or something like that. Also, regarding the title, it's so interesting because Joyce was writing the book for like 20 years, and during those years, he was the most famous author in the world, and it was, right on the heels of Ulysses, and so everybody was so interested in what's this guy working on next, but he wouldn't reveal the title. It was work in progress. He was calling it work in progress, and he would do these like, if anybody can guess the title, I'll give you money, things like that. Like it was all a game. But also supposedly, as you guys probably know, the working title of the book for some while was Finn's Hotel, presumably with the apostrophe, right? And Finn's Hotel does appear throughout the text, just as Finnegans Wake actually appears in the text several times in different ways. So I'm interested in like, when did he change the title? Like, how long was he considering it Finn's Hotel? When did he change it to Finnegans Wake? And I don't know, how is that? How can you see that in the text or in the development of his writing the text that he changed the title at some point,
Yeah, Finn's Hotel, not a great title. not that good. Finnegans Wake, amazing. So yeah, that'd be interesting to see when that actually evolved.
But meaningful to him, right? Isn't that where he met Nora, supposedly?
Yeah, but it doesn't trigger all the different associations that the current title does, which I guess is why he went with it.
Maybe that's what he had to tell her. It's like, darling, I'm
That's
working
right.
on this thing. It's very, very, very,
It's all
very
about
important.
you. It's you're gonna love it.
There's a theory, I guess, by Dennis Rose that the title was Finn's Hotel up until to 1927, if I remember correctly. And around the time that Joyce had the concept for the first chapter and started working on the first chapter, that's when he switched to Finnegans Wake, even without revealing it to anybody. But this is not certain at all. I think it's Dennis Rose's idea without a substantial proof.
And it seems to be, I wonder at what point, because and this may be something people disagree with, but I think Finnegan's Wake almost constitutes a kind of Book of the Dead. And that that's why he was so worked up about that Going Forth by Day book that was coming out, because based on the Egyptian Book of the Dead, because he thought someone ate his lunch. He thought someone was going to beat him to it. And Finnegan's Wake works really well as a Book of the Dead type title. So I wonder if, as that theme emerged, I wonder if that's when that title kind of locked in. Brent, you had a hand up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
I was sort of aware that the conversation was going a different direction, but just to sort of leapfrog off what Eric was saying with bringing McLuhan and all that into it, it's not just that these new forms of media come out and change what people are engaged with. So the kids are on the down TikToks instead of reading books. It's also, I think, that these different forms of media change the way we interpret every other form of media. So you've got this idea, I guess, pre-Gutenberg press. What is a book? A book is a thing that you have and you read it for depth and complexity. You have a book and you read it every day from cover to cover, probably the Bible, and you are always increasing in complexity in your understanding of a single text or a small range of texts. As you get the Gutenberg press, you get like, okay, well, now we're reading widely, we're reading broadly, we're reading to have as much of a range of things as possible. You get to like TV and film, and you kind of experience things as an onslaught of images, and you can kind of see that changes the way we read books as well, as a series of images that kind of go forward. I actually used Joyce, I think the portrait of the artist as a young man, as an example of technology in one of my classes, because it actually felt to me like it was I don't know if this is a bad take, but it felt like an onslaught of images. It felt very sort of cinematic in its mentality and in the way that it was put together. But then sort of now with the dang kids on their dang TikToks, and AI and all the rest of it, I think again changes our impression of what a text ought to be, or the way we're meant to think of a text, which is essentially as something that can be optimized, that you can, kind of should be able to engage a text and ask a question of it and very quickly get an answer, and be able to, consume a text rapidly, and in a way that is, I guess, aesthetically satisfying, and ideologically coherent, in a way that's very quick. And what's one thing that's interesting about these sorts of works is that they seem to resist that. They seem to very much resist the current moment of the way media has, or the changes in media has kind of influenced us to read differently, in that it is totally resistant to that form of reading. And although I'm sure you could, type in, to Google, why is there no apostrophe in Finnegans Wake, and get an answer, that I think is, is antithetical to the process that this actually invites us to engage in.
I'm speaking here from McLuhan's backyard in Toronto. I grew up in Canada. I'm a Canadian. I'm an American as well, but I grew up in Canada. I was never particularly interested in McLuhan until we filmed Chapter 5 of Finnegans Wake at the Fisher Rare Books Library, which houses McLuhan's library. And we'll put the film out on our website and on YouTube this coming year. This is One Little Goat Theater Company. And we will early in the film, we will show McLuhan's first page. His annotations are quite legible, and he really felt that he had kind of cracked the code, so to speak, of this novel. What I discovered through doing that was that he was very interested in Gutenberg. The early book of his is called The Gutenberg Galaxy, and he had a kind of almost nostalgia for a time when literature was more of a community event. I mean, here we are, and we're reading this together. And so it was kind of amazing to be at the Fisher Rare Books Library, to be in McLuhan's home, so to speak, where all of his books are. And we had, I think on the night, Richard, was maybe 75 people was our capacity. So 75 people with us in the room, all sharing this text together. And in that Gutenberg Galaxy book of McLuhan's, he's charting this kind of individualistic trend in reading. Maybe the TikToks and so on are actually more social because we have them in our pocket and we're able. So it is going to be very interesting to see how this stuff is shared. Maybe reading will become more communal again. I don't know. But what I do know is that Finnegans Wake is something that people often read in groups. People read as a kind of community, and even those who are reading it individually are still consulting others in order to read it. It's just, I think it may never happen that anyone just reads it cold as a kind of isolated event. So that's what the book has also done for me. Coming out of the pandemic is when Richard and I started reading this. And now we've met all you folks, we've spent time, I've met Kenji, it kind of, all of these connections have happened through the book. So the community aspect of the book is gold. And, and thanks to you, Bob, for making it making a kind of conducive environment for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that's a great point, though. It is very conducive to the modern media landscape. It's like we said, it's modular. It's also full of like vignettes. It's full of little skits that would translate very well to short form media. And here's you may not know this if you and you may know it very well if like Brenton, you're also a teacher, or if you have teenage kids. Do you know what the kids do now with their like with podcasts and like audiobooks and stuff? My kids listen to stuff at 3x speed. I can't even understand it. When I hear what they're listening to, like they're acclimated to such a high density of information. It just sounds like noise to me. But he's like, what? I'm listening to a podcast. And it's just literally like, it sounds almost like the old internet dial-up sound. So like, I think that, as much as people get down on the kids with their phones, but they have amazing information processing capabilities, and I think would have the ability to take to this like fish to water. Lorenzo, I think you got cut off in the middle of a thought. If you want to circle back around.
It was about the Book of the Dead. Yeah, I think there's a connection between the Book of the Dead and that moment in the process of the creation of Finnegans Wake, of the writing, when the first chapter was concocted. And because at that time, Joyce asked Weaver, his patron, to give him a theme for a short piece. And she asked for a piece about a dead man, the skeleton of an ancient man in a specific place in Ireland. And he thought it was great because he didn't want to make a short piece of it, but it was like the missing piece of the puzzle he was looking for making the whole structure of Finnegans Wake come together. And so it was the internal monologue, we could say, of a dead man or something along those lines that prompted the idea of the first chapter, and then of moving from Finn's Hotel to Finnegans Wake, maybe as a title. And I would like to add one more reflection on that. We usually think of Ulysses as book of the day, and Finnegans Wake the book of the night, and so it's like they form kind of a circle from the morning to the evening. You get Ulysses, and then Finnegans Wake would be the night. But Finnegans Wake does not have a beginning and end. It's a circle in itself. So it's telling something. It's telling us, in my opinion, something about this dream, which is ontologically prior and wider than we usually think of as dreams, as something that begins and that ends and interrupts our days, which are the main continuity. No, it looks like the main continuity is that of this dream, and that the day of Ulysses is just an interruption inside of it, ontologically inferior, let's say. And maybe it's not just a dream, it's the afterlife, and or before life. And you know that dream and death are said to be brothers in mythology. They share a lot of, and also the Book of the Dead, and all the, not just the Book of the Dead, but the ideas of the afterlife that the Egyptian had were modeled around the night, and all the path that the sun had to go through during the night while it was invisible. And so maybe Finnegans Wake is represents the thought, the world that is beyond life and circles it, and it is at the same time analog to a dream or to a night, but it's not just the only level. I think it's also death as before and after life.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I don't know that I see much Tibetan Book of the Dead stuff in there, but I think like the bardo is a perfect word to encapsulate the dramatis loci of the wake, of the between, whether it's between waking and sleeping, or death and life, whichever of the betweens we want to deal. I think it works kind of for all of those.
I think Bardo and Phil's Hotel
Yeah. Oh,
share,
good point.
something as
Yeah.
So maybe the idea was already there before he moved
And then
from Phil's Hotel to Finnegans.
yeah. And that's a good point, actually. So, all right. So I'm sorry, Joyce, for dogging on the Finn's Hotel title, because that would actually work for Chapel Perilous. Finn's Hotel would work as an analog to Chapel Perilous, probably.
And also for us lowbrows, Stephen King's Shining.
Oh yeah,
it strikes me. There was a thing in the 80s for the hotel where strange things happen, whether it's the Eagles Hotel California, you've got Carla Bley's opera Escalator Over the Hill, and Cecil Clarke's Hotel. I wanted to start the Finnegans Wake, the Gideon's Finnegans Wake Society. We were gonna put Finnegans Wake in every hotel room in America.
That's right. It's a great idea. Yeah, there's something like kind of weird about a hotel in general. One of the worst things ever is staying in a hotel by yourself, and I don't know why. There's just it is a between space that is like, even if you're like on a fun trip, I just find that thing where you get back to the hotel by yourself, and it's like, ugh, I don't like this.
Yeah, it's a great point about the hotel and the Bardo and The Shining. That's a great example. In the documentary Room 237, where it has all these different perspectives from different people obsessed with The Shining, at some point towards the end, they ask one of the interpreters of The Shining, like, why did Kubrick make it like this? And the guy just responds, why did Joyce write Finnegan's Wake? Yeah, and it's also like a hotel is this crossroads of people from all, it could be all over the world, all meeting in one spot. So I think that's part of what's going on with the Finn's Hotel thing, and also the pub in Dublin, Mullingar's House or Mullingar Inn. I think maybe it used to have a hotel or an inn on top of it, so that's also involved.
When there's this different sleeper in the same bed every night of a hotel.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And even in the wake, the Irish wake tradition, I was listening to this thing that for the wake, there was like a nice set of linens that a village would have, and you would borrow it. And so you'd use like the same linens to wake different people. And so this continuity of like different people in the same bed having different or the same dream and even like the same linens, very, very hotel-esque.
I was at the show of Shang Wang. He's a Texas-born, well, sorry, Taiwanese-born Texan comedian. He was here in Toronto, and one of his early in his set, he was talking about being in the hotel and how the memory foam was of the mattress was someone else's memory.
That's really good.
I've worked with this guy, E.J. Gold, who's kind of a Bardo expert. He wrote the American Book of the Dead based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and he's the one that encouraged me to read Finnegans Wake for the first time. And the Grand Central Hotel is what he calls a Bardo station. So definitely, I would affirm a hotel as a Bardo place. And another thing I'd like to say is I've looked at Finnegans Wake as a Book of the Dead for years. And when Robert Anton Wilson gave a course called Tales of the Tribe, which focused on Finnegans Wake and Ezra Pound's The Cantos, I did a post analyzing the word leaf. I had the whole this Kabbalah about the word leaf and the number of times it came up, and leaf comes up quite a lot, and also in the very end. And Wilson's reply was very, very interesting because he brought up the pun of leave, like you're getting ready to leave the body. And he pointed out that as Joyce was writing this, he, saw his body breaking down and maybe subconsciously or consciously knew that he was getting ready to leave his body. And so reading Finnegans Wake, like one of the things that Gold teaches about Bardo training is that the more you expose yourself to it, and there's zillions ways of doing it, like The Shining or many things, that it exposes you to the Bardo, and therefore you get a familiarity with it as you're able to comprehend and understand this kind of new dream world or dream language. It's preparing you for not only Bardo experiences you have in your life, like if anyone's done a strong psychedelic, I mean, that'll, you're in the Bardo there. But also we probably will leave this body at some point. And so Finnegans Wake is preparing for death in one way that it can be looked at.
For sure. And really the leaf is a transcendental object in the book. It's the thing that reaches out from the external waking world to communicate with the dreamer. The tip against the glass, the recurring tip is from a leaf. Yeah, that's wild. All right, should I take another card, or does anyone have anything to add on? This one's a little bit weird. Okay, so Shen the Penman, right? I always interpreted him with being a obvious self-insert character, right? He's the character of the writer with all the kind of neurotic characteristics that Joyce likes to describe himself with. But something tipped me off to an interesting interpretation of him that I don't think I've ever seen before that I'd like to give a try. So Shen is always surrounded with these like ink vocabulary. He lives in an ink battle house. He writes on the full scape of his body, right? So he lives in an ink bottle. His body is compared to paper. I think Shem is a medium aware character. I think Shem knows that he is a character in a book who is physically comprised of ink and paper. And that's what all the ink and fullscape paper language is about. That Shem is not just the writer; he's the book itself, made of paper and ink.
Shem also apparently in the book writes the book with his own excrement on his own body.
Right. Yeah. Which is on the full scape of his body, and his excrement is ink, and squids excrete ink and all that. Anyway, Alex, you can go ahead.
Guys, I have a little bit weird theory, so apologies in advance here. Due to Finnegans Wake, I found myself absolutely unexpected in Jesuit University learning biblical Hebrew. I started in September. It's my first time with Semitic languages, and it's quite cool experience. And what I found, I learn Hebrew, Hebrew biblical Hebrew in French. And I'm not sure, maybe lots of you knows how it works with Semitic languages, but in a nutshell, you have the root. In French, it's racine. You have a couple of letters, and they just show the idea of something, idea of managing something, idea of crown, idea of etc., etc. And then you have models, and in French, the name is racine et shem, like literally shem, schemes. Yep. And adding vocalization, understanding of this vocalization, this root can be changed. Like it could be noun, adjective, verb, verbal form, etc. And it's totally, it was totally amazing. Understand that we have this book of root, like roots, yeah, and then this shem is kind of guy or kind of character or kind of part of Semitic language who can be read like you can. It's sorry guys, how to explain that these vocalizations, they are not in the text usually. Yep, it's just you need to know how it works. And based on my knowledge, based on the scheme Shem I apply to the word, I can read the same text absolutely in different ways. Yep. So I don't know how to make a conclusion here, but it was my insight regarding the Shem of this year.
I love it. Yeah.
Shem is I'm a Hebrew speaker. My dad's born in Tel Aviv, so I know the language. I'm fluent. And Shem is means name. It means name. So I don't know if that. I mean, maybe that helps your theory there, Bob. That he is, I guess, kind of the what you're describing there, Alexander, is a kind of naming of things and the way you name. So I feel like there is an affinity there between the two of you, Alex and Bob.
Yeah, and I guess there's that thing where he's forging. He's kind of, Shem is the fulfillment of Stephen Daedalus's promise to forge in the smithy of his soul the uncreated conscious of his race. And it's when you forge something, you got to make something, and the physical creation is the book itself. It is the substance of paper and ink that is how Joyce externalized this interior world, which I think must have been pretty expansive for the parts, the tip of the iceberg that we were able to see. I think we can guess what the interior space might have been like. And then this is kind of a similar related thing.
To
yeah,
stay
please.
on
Go for it.
this point, do you think that Joyce himself thought he was a character in a book?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, he'd been writing himself into books forever, right? He's in.
Yeah, but I mean.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like
he was
actually,
a medium conscious character.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I guess in at least I would guess that it would be a multiplicity thing. That you know what I mean? Like you can be more than one thing simultaneously. And so I think he would think that he was a character in a book, a god on the way to the store. Like he could consider himself in numerous dimensions of being, I think. But one of them would for sure be a character in a book.
And
Um,
sorry, just one
no,
second.
no, please. Yeah. I'm sorry. I meant to ask if there was any further.
Okay, yeah. Wilson puts out that concept of characters in books, knowing that they're characters in books. And I had a particularly altered state of existence after reading Schrodinger's Cat, where I had that feeling like I was a character in a book of some kind. And so just sort of emphasizing Lorenzo's point is, did Joyce have that kind of realization or experience?
If he
Brenton?
was so keen on working so hard on literature, maybe he did.
But would he allow for an existence of an author that was creative enough that would imagine somebody like James Joyce who could
That's
be
a
a
good
peer to
point.
him?
Yeah.
Now, Shem, the name Shem is one syllable away from Hashem. And when you read from the Bible, when you read from the Torah in Hebrew, you can't say the name of God, this tetragram, Yahweh, Yud He Vav He, YHWH. You can't pronounce that. So, I mean, again, this is a fairly, we're one syllable away from the ultimate authorial figure, a godlike figure in the name of Shem. So he's kind of a step away from that, but he's also this kind of shitty son of Noah. So he's not, he's not, he's far removed from God, let's say, but there is at least a kind of semantic, because when you say Hashem, it means the name. You don't say God, you can't actually pronounce that name, so you say the name, Hashem.
Yeah, and Joyce was born in a certain place in a certain time, but at the same time he wanted to be also God, the creator of the book he was in, and probably Finnegans Wake was his strategy.
And when you talk about this self-consciousness, Pirandello's 6 characters in search of an author, I feel like would be the sort of big bang in that concept, which would, and I don't know the year of that play, maybe 1920.
Yeah.
Is that about right? So
about
that would
right.
definitely be at the front of Joyce's mind too. Pirandello being such a massive influence in Europe and in the world.
When
And he
Sham
liked,
being, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sham being a visually impaired author, if you can't be Hashem, maybe you can be Homer.
That's a good point. I'm sorry, Brenton, you got your hand up?
Yes. Yeah, I was just gonna just take it back to Wilson again, and it's interesting in Illuminatus, I think I can't remember who it is, but while they're fighting Leviathan, somebody has the realization that they're in a book. And what's interesting about that is how unhelpful that realization is. Like it's just, I guess, our lives are made from these very immediate interconnections of everything that affect our being. And it's just sort of like that realization isn't helpful in that moment. Because they're like, even if the characters in a book, they're still in the middle of this great battle. And it kind of, it makes me think of that whole gag of like, hey man, like time, what even is time? Time's not like, it's just like an abstract interpretation of all this, like this, the clocks are just like us imposing a vision on things from a relative point of view and being like, yeah, but like I'm trying to catch a train. Like, do you know the time?
Right.
Like it's, you know, like there's these great realizations and these great truths, you know, can actually be maybe a little bit too great to actually bear relevance to the fundamental material from which our immediate lives are formed.
Yeah, people don't say it as much anymore, I think, because they realized it's not that useful, which is people would say we're living in a simulation, but then you go, oh, yeah, and therefore, and it's like, well, there's no therefore. And it's like, oh, well, then what difference does it make? Linda,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just, I don't know, dispute it, but if you realize you're living in a simulation or that you are a character in some bigger book, that kind of helps you break the programming that this is the only reality, that's what's in front of us, that there might be, you know, other forms of life, other dimensions,
It's a key to magic.
experience, other entities. I've been a flotation tank user for about 40 years, and you definitely have experiences in that make you that suggest that there's a lot more going on than we see in our immediate reality or this simulation. And you can have glimpses outside of the simulation, and not that there's anything wrong with the simulation or whatever. And you know, it's fun and all that. Doesn't mean to say that one is better than the other, just that there's much more going on than we realize.
Yeah, I'll buy that for sure. Linda, do you want to go?
Yeah, just to continue with the same thought. So Shem is self-conscious character, and generally speaking about characters realizing they are characters in the book, it's not the only way to destabilize these narrative levels that Gerard Jeanette mentioned. Like, there are narrative levels, and if you get some kind of destabilization, you get this narrative metalepsis. So for example, the author is talking to the character, or a living person gets into a book, for example, as in there is a short story by Woody Allen in which a guy reads this book, Madame Bovary, and he gets into the book and he has an affair, and then the story itself changes. Then students reading Madame Bovary say, who is this Jewish guy that he sleeps with, and so on. So there are many ways of doing this. And going back to Finnegans Wake, it makes me think, so usually I've studied this a little bit, metafiction, narrative levels, they're more or less obvious, and if there is a case of narrative metalepsis, it's easy enough to see. Okay, a guy from New York goes into the French book, we see this. But in Finnegans Wake, the case is more complicated. So this character is self-conscious. What about the others? Aren't they self-conscious? How do we know? So where are these levels? Can we distinguish them? So what kind of picture is that? For me, it's a new way to look at it. I am aware of metafictional narratives. I have been absolutely sure that something is going on in Finnegans Wake, but now it's a way for me to look at narrative levels. Can we even see them?
And I think maybe an interesting way that Finnegans Wake deals with metafiction is that it essentially focuses on the reader. The reader becomes the star of the show, that the main character of Finnegans Wake is the person reading Finnegans Wake, and that's kind of that's how far it takes the levels of abstraction, that it actually escapes the book and envelops you, the reader, and that you are the star of the show. There is no character in Finnegans Wake except for you, the reader. Maybe.
And James Joyce.
Oh yeah, he's not gonna leave himself
You
out.
can't escape him. Yeah, he's very much in the room. This is also like 1920s is when Agatha Christie writes a murder mystery where, spoiler, the author is the murderer. So it's
Oh, I like that.
the ultimate question of who done it.
Yeah.
And
That's really good. I like that.
I hope not the murder of the reader, because you know,
Yeah.
this week, are we in danger? Is James just out to get us?
Having murdered all the English he knew is a great line about the king leaving the trial. It's having murdered all the English.
In My Fair Lady, Henry Higgins accuses Eliza Doolittle of the cold-blooded murder of the English tongue.
Yes.
When McLuhan asked Ezra Pound what the cantos were about, Pound said it was a murder mystery. Who killed Western civilization?
All right, so should we go to another card, or do we have Lorenzo? You got something?
Yeah, I got something.
Yeah.
I was trying to answer what Linda said. Maybe a way of discerning the different meta levels inside a work like Finnegans Wake, or at least a meta fiction where the meta lexis is that correct? Meta lexis is not apparent.
Metalepsis.
Metalepsis, okay, where the metalepsis is not apparent. One can see how the characters act, and this links back to the idea that knowing that one is in a book or in a simulation or in something that is coded and programmed links to magic, because the ones that understand this nature of reality then can hack into it. And you can see it, for example, in the films of David Lynch. Often you have these levels where you have the dream and the reality, and they are intertwined in such a way that there is there seems to be a correspondence between each character on each level and the character on the other level, but they are not aware of this. And then there are some mysterious characters that move through the levels, and by the very fact that you don't see their inner psychology, that they are mysterious to you, you cannot really tell if they are the same from one reality to the other, but the way they are treated marks them as self-conscious characters of this meta. And I think, I mean, I use David Lynch as an example, but I think it's quite common nowadays. And of course, Finnegans Wake, it's a different beast because it's earlier, but at the same time is more complex. So it's not impossible that it's actually more advanced than what we still have today in metafiction. But maybe if we ever reach a level of understanding the text well enough to see when there is someone who is getting asleep, and then the next part of the book is the dream of the one who got asleep at the end, for example, of the preceding chapter, then that could be an indication of meta levels with a hierarchy, and then looking at what the characters or characters aspects do could be a way of tackling that, maybe.
That's awesome. Yeah, for sure. And then just what real quick. So Finnegans Wake came out amongst modernism as the literary movement. Then it became postmodernism, and now we're at metamodernism. And I think that's actually a pretty good label for Finnegans Wake. I think that's a good milieu for Finnegans Wake to operate in. Alex?
I just a quick thought top of my head. I mean, to continuing amazing message of Linda and Lorenza that we can correspond it with Wilson's meta programming circuit. You know, I was just thinking about this. Like, oh, it works.
Yeah, for sure. So one time I wrote a character that knew it was a character and met me and had a conversation with the character that knew it was a character. And then as I was writing it, the character was like, yeah, but what makes you so real? And I was unable to produce definitive evidence. And I accidentally backed my way into what the Buddhists call shunyata. And I accidentally like achieved some sort of weird realization of the impermanence and interwoven nature of identity just by I was trying to write a dumb story and I accidentally yeah. All right, anything else to add in, or should we move to the next card? Igor, was that a hand or oh, go on. Okay. So, what do you think about the significance of intoxication in the wake? I know the Ukrainian group, you guys have an awesome drinking game that you play that if everyone doesn't know about it, they should find out very quickly. I know Wilson said that that was the best way to take in Finnegan's Wake was in a group, reading it aloud after a couple of drinks. So, does anyone have I like I am basically teetotal. I don't really drink. And so I am kind of out of the loop on that. So what am I missing? What's going or also another avenue to take if anyone has anything on this. Did Joyce write when he was drunk? I mean, I can't create. I can't write or anything when I'm intoxicated, which is part of why I don't do it anymore. But that seemed to be his main method of altering his consciousness, right? And Finnegan's Wake is written from a very altered state of consciousness. So, do we think Joyce was writing it when drunk? And what is the importance of engaging with it after a little bit of inebriation? Does anyone have a perspective?
Maybe it's the very thing, the reason it's written like that.
that is the probably the obvious answer, I suppose.
He wrote when he was drunk.
Yeah, is that part of what the language trick is? Is this like a slurred narration in a way? Is that where some of this blending comes together? Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if it's like yeah, like
Maybe this is part of the
thematically.
theme. Maybe this is part of the theme of darkness.
Yeah. Well, I guess intoxication and like the dream state and the between state are kind of interwoven as well. Alex, yeah, you got a hand?
Yeah, I just a quick. First of all, Bobby, I remember that the first maybe night event which I watched on the recording already. You had the glass of beer.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
like one of three that I had that year. I'm a very light touch. I was going to have it today. It's just a little too early in the day. I probably still have stuff to do because one would get me.
Yeah, regarding the question itself, like there is a fun part here that it seems like for Joyce intoxication was like not to be drunk. So it works vice versa, yeah. But if you are talking seriously about this topic, Joyce is really very, from my point of view, very deeply psychedelic author. Yeah, it's definitely not about drinking. Yeah, so I think that it's totally parallel from my point of view, from what I how I feel Joyce. Yep, it's drinking was like a kind of parallel habit, and it didn't influence on the work itself at all. It's just my point of view, guys.
That's actually mine as well, but I don't see that mindset in it that often. It is there sometimes, I think, but I don't see that as the overall point of view. Anyone with a hand up?
I think about the idea that a publican dreamed the book. That it makes me think about the Watcher in Marvel Comics, because he's there in a bar all day, every day, watching people drinking.
Right,
And
right.
of course, Joyce had a very rich memory of all of his alcohol experiences that constantly, I think, shape. And I think somewhere Joyce says he got his real education in bars. And just going back to a previous question of yours, the opening of Remembrance of Things Past has the narrator talking about how he can't fall asleep in a new bed. And you know the just yeah Alan Watts said that he thought Christianity was wine, Islam was coffee, and Buddhism was tea. And it seems like so many parts of America are so driven by alcohol, as Terence McKenna talked about, whether it's, you know, John Lennon said, 90% of people were born out of a beer bottle on Saturday night. And, you know, how much it fuels corporate America. And it's interesting, our beloved president is a teetotaler as well. Alcohol and drugs play such a strange role in our world. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just wondering what the Joyce biographers thought of your question. If Joyce wrote while he's drunk, I read the Ellman biography and I don't recall him
I
suggesting.
think he drank water. I remember there being a story about like he didn't like Nora to mess with his water bottle when he was writing, but I guess maybe because it wasn't water, maybe that's why he was worked up about it.
But I also think the experiences of his drinking definitely affected the writing. If he did not actually write while he's drunk, I think, like Eric just said, he had memories of his alcoholic experiences, and you can get into some very high mystical states with alcohol. It's just, obviously it's a synergy between the brain of the person doing it and the alcohol. So yeah, I think there's some merit to that. And I also think I also agree that it's a totally psychedelic novel that connects with the Bardo, because the Bardo is a totally psychedelic space, whether you take a substance or not. And I wonder what other things Joyce might have done, like cocaine might have been around, or hashish or something like that.
I believe it's known that he did absinthe sometimes. I believe I've never had that. I know it's like kind of a cousin of a psychedelic experience, but I don't have personal experience.
A lot of medication had opium and things in it at the time before FDA. I do think, to Eric's point, the social aspect of drinking is important here, as we get to experience contra drinking each other and having a lively debate. But alcohol seems like the wrong intoxicant for something like this. Like, we know, Stevenson wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde on a cocaine binge in 3 days. And, Coltrane would take heroin and practice for 12 hours straight. But if you consume a bunch of alcohol, you're not gonna like write high quality, complex prose for very long. It's gonna be more like the Seinfeld episode where he writes something on his bedstand and wakes up and can't read it in the morning and has no idea what it is. So, but we also don't know what his sober state was. We don't know like what the starting point was and what he may have been altering was alcohol or other drugs. But there's certainly at the time no shortage of intoxicants. Like, there's a famous, I think it's Vin Marianis, which was Bordeaux, that was fortified with opium, and that was endorsed by like 3 different popes, and Albert Einstein. Like, every celebrity had endorsed this beverage that was, opium in a bottle, basically, that people consumed. So it was just
Yeah, and
on the border.
I guess he was like kind of in constant physical discomfort, and that the drinking may have had more to do with that than anything else. Was just trying to dial back the pain that he was in from his teeth and his eyes, and I get the impression that he didn't take particularly good care of himself. So I don't think that clearly the eyes aren't his fault, I don't think. But I think some of the other things, I think it kind of, you get the sense that he treated his body like a vehicle that carried his mind around, maybe a little too much. Yeah. All right. Oh, go ahead.
There is an interesting side to Joyce using alcohol in Finnegans Wake. I mean, mentioning, not using it, but mention it in the text. There is a variety of names of alcohol. So I studied the history of alcohol for a while. Through this study, I became aware of all the different names. And then suddenly I'm reading Finnegans Wake and I come across these names of drinks that are not used anymore, that belong to a historical period, to a country. The cocktail recently we came across this Porto Flip or something. It's something is going on there as well. If you look at this variety, where's it come from? It's not just enough for you to mention, Guinness and Ishkibar. No, not just that. There is a lot. Okay, and once again, going back to the point that Eric made about the alcohol in the intoxication general human history, we've got a very complex history with intoxication, alcohol and other substances. Basically, it's been a social lubricant and all of that, but it's been very destructive as well. So perhaps this side of alcohol is there because Finnegans Wake is all about cycles of history and about all different manifestations of the same processes. So alcohol is there on this level as well.
For sure. Alex?
Guys, just a quick comment here, and also Linda, I'm not sure if you can share right now, but Linda has amazing how to say the start of the reading diary with all types of alcohol, which we already found in Finnegans Wake. It's totally amazing. Yep. If you can share with guys, it's yeah. You see
great.
this. It's totally great. Yep,
that is awesome. And I guess it's whiskey that's responsible for the resurrection of Tim Finnegan. So I guess, and within the narrative of the story, it has magical properties.
Yeah, about this, since I have shown this, the thing is, we've covered how many 130 something pages. It's just 2 years ago I started this diary and I thought, okay, so on this, like the first page, I'll just I'll just write down quotes connected with alcohol because I'm interested in the history of alcohol. And then 2 years I ran out of space. See, but it's not like the whole book, it's just these pages that we have covered so far. Yes. So obviously I'm paying attention to what I'm interested in, and maybe reading too much into this, right? The presence of these names. But maybe not. We don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah. Well, it makes, I mean, like if the dreamer is indeed someone that runs a bar, that would make sense that his inventory is running through his head throughout the whole thing, and it's very significant. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Will you eventually publish your drawings there? I'd love to check them out.
This thing was supposed to be, just for me because it's a diary.
Oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah. I didn't mean to pry.
I published it on Blue Sky, this picture.
Yeah. See you, PQ. All right, so we can start bringing this in for a landing. I got one last thing, and then we can start to wrap up. So something that I was thinking of is how the kind of transformation of something that is at once profane but can become sacred, in terms of a lot of times in Finnegans Wake, I think that he was just doing like pop culture references of his day, right? And now, 100 years later, those pop culture references are now historical references, and that process will the text of Finnegans Wake, its overall context in how we interact with it, will continue to become more and more obscure. And this idea that he he might have been referring to the Kardashians of his day, but now it's this deep literary analysis that requires understanding. And so just the idea of the transformation of the profane to the sacred. And what do you think that the readers of the day would have encountered in Finnegans Wake that's different from how we're encountering it? Do you think it was easier to read for someone in Dublin in 1945 than like would they see it in a much different way, like someone's doing a pastiche of pop culture? Or would it have been, you know what I mean? Like, has it changed from its original publishing uh, now as something that occurs to us as more sacred than profane? And I understand if there's not an easy reply in there.
I think it's interesting that they did not have the guidebooks. So that the accomplishment of the skeleton key, which people sort of are critical of that book, but they're doing it without, we have the incredible superstructure of podcasts and library shelves full of books and human beings who've spent decades with it. And, Robert Anton Wilson or, Shelley Brivik or all these people, who can guide us. There's a poem Basil Bunting wrote on his copy of the Cantos. And he said, "There are the Alps. They don't make sense." And so I think a lot of people struggle with it. It's interesting in terms of what you're saying, and I don't mean to talk too much. If you look at Flann O'Brien's response to the book or James Stevens' response to the fragments that were published earlier, I think is a partial answer that deeply literate Irish people were able to read a lot of it and get a lot of it. But I remember the writer Cynthia Heimel talking about being alive in the 60s and having all these great Beatles albums come out. And that's a different experience than those, we can all listen to the Beatles today, but it's not like hearing Sgt. Pepper the day it comes out. And the example, Paul McCartney always talks about 3 days after the album came out, he heard Jimi Hendrix playing the song live. So, to see, what was Ezra Pound's outrage about Finnegans Wake? What did it mean? And of course, there is a universe next door where all of us are talking about Virginia Woolf. And so, that's my answer to your question.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And so part of what made me think of that is there's this thing in, I guess, information theory where there's no kind of analysis that you can perform on a seed that will tell you what that seed will grow into that is any faster or more efficient than just planting it and letting the complex system's emergent properties come forth. And so you already see with Finnegans Wake, it's undergoing a constant state change. It's no longer the same book it was in a world where its contemporaries could read it and be like, "Oh, I know what he's talking about." You know what I mean? Now we're in like another level of abstraction where we're having to kind of excavate things. And then that's just going to go further and further and further as this thing goes, as it's likely to go. So just an interesting idea of we don't know what emerges from complex systems. Finnegans Wake is a complex system. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Whoever has a hand, go ahead.
Yes, this discussion reminded me of Rupert Sheldrake and his morpho theories of morphogenesis. And he's got this concept that any kind of field of knowledge, that it works by fields, that these fields kind of expand. And so so there's the field surrounding Finnegans Wake has grown and grown over the years. And so I think that makes it easier for someone, to tap into as opposed to when it first came out.
Sorry. Speaking of complex systems, the famous saying that the only way to contain a can of worms once you've opened it is to get a bigger can. You can't put them back in the same can. And so the can of worms keeps getting bigger and big. We need like a bigger and bigger can for all the worms. And I think but maybe the modern-ish parallel is Pynchon, since we started today talking about the Shadow Ticket. He also does the high and low culture, the historical and the pop culture references. He also had the obscenity issues where the Nobel Committee wouldn't give him the Nobel for Gravity's Rainbow. And I think it's just the audience gets bigger, the audience that can appreciate and study it. And I think for Joyce, there was like the narrow elite that could get through it. And for Pynchon, it was bigger. And now we go back to Joyce, and like more and more, it's like just more democratized, and like ordinary civilians like myself can enjoy it thanks to Wheat and other tools.
Absolutely. Just real quick, I think the role of cricket in Finnegans Wake is isomorphic to the role of bowling in Shadow Ticket.
I love it.
Yeah, this going back to the idea of the shifting of perception of what is low culture and high culture when they get further removed in the past. This is a bit like the painter's work, the painting that, because he used some pigments, some chemical formulas, then the colors, certain colors change with time, and so their paintings change. And sometimes there's no way around it. And of course, we have many examples of books that did that, and they shifted in perception. At the same time, though, I think that Joyce must have thought about this, and I suspect that his use of his usage of something that was common at the time is maybe thought out to work out in a different time, in a different way, in the long run, in the future, because we also get lots of references to things that were not well known. They were just little details or particulars that he took here or there, he saw in a bar. So it was not something that, even if it was recent, it was just in the moment. It was not something that other people could actually understand in an easy way. And also he goes back to things that were common in a past age, and uses it with a lot of familiarity, creating this very erudite text. And one can see that he uses also in Ulysses, of course, but in Finnegans Wake even more, he uses past styles, past forms, or even the grammars of ancient languages superimposed one to another. So I'm not sure, but I suspect that this was part of his plan, that he has to have thought about it, that he didn't write Finnegans Wake for it to change dramatically after 20 years or 50 years because the perception changed. He knew about this, and so I think there is something about his poetics that is to be discovered about this very fact.
Yeah, I would say he was writing for our situation now, where we would have like a broad frame of reference and tools that could be used to understand him. I think he definitely would prefer what we have now as his audience, as opposed to just people who happen to have seen a play or heard a song. I think now is the time he wrote for, now and moving forward. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out for this. If anyone has any final thoughts that you didn't get to get out, if we left anybody hanging or anything got cut off, please feel free to jump in. But I've had a blast. Thank you so much,
I
Alex.
just want to say one
Or
quick
Oz.
thing.
Yep,
Real,
of course.
real super obvious, which is that Thomas Pynchon was very influenced by James Joyce. Gilles Deleuze is very influenced by James Joyce, and we can safely say that James Joyce has profoundly affected modern literature.
Yeah, I would say that is for sure. Alex, you got a final thought?
Yep. I just like to share, guys, that I'm so happy to be here with you today and all other days we spend together on readings or mailings or whatever. So just to thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I had so much fun coming out for the last reading group. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for everything that everyone is doing. And so the idea is next year, if you can work it into your schedule sometime over the next year, see if you can read the first 4 pages of Finnegans Wake, and we'll see you back here next year. I know it's a grueling schedule, but I think somehow we'll manage.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Thanks,
Of
everyone.
course. Eric, go
This
ahead.
Friday is the bicentennial of the Decemberist uprising.
Oh yeah. So and the Winter Wakians, I feel like a good AKA for that is the last Decemberist. So long as we know what it means. I'm not quite sure what it means yet. If it means something good, that's what we are. If it doesn't, we're not. All right, everybody, take care. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.